Hey guys, Marcy here. Today's video is going to be relatively short compared to what I normally post, as I wanted to get this out somewhat quickly, and due to this I won't really be going into as much detail as I usually do, but I do have some small announcements at the end of the video. Anyways, getting right into the build, starting off with the subclass, we're going to be using Brood Weaver. Going over to our abilities, aspects and fragments, we're going to be using Empowering Rift as our class ability, as this build already has a lot of built-in healing due to both our choice of artifact as well as our choice of exotics. Going over to our grenade, we're going to be going with Threadling Grenade, as that will pair very nicely with one of our aspects, which, speaking of aspects, our first one is going to be Weaver's Call, as that will generate passive threadlings for simply dealing damage, and each threadling will give us class ability energy, and Rewalk as a get out of jail free card, as well as another way to get Woven Mail. For fragments, we're going to be using Thread of Evolution to boost threadling damage, Thread of Wisdom for a consistent, easy way to gen orbs, Thread of Mind to loop our class ability even more, and Thread of Warding for easy access to Woven Mail, and Generation as our last fragment to help us get our grenade a little bit quicker. Going over weapons, I opt to use double special, using both Mint and Retrograde and Uncivil Discourse, as with the artifact mod this season, both Overload and Anti-Barrier are going to be taken care of by these two weapons, and we have Unstop through both our subclass as well as our final weapon, being Heartshadow. Since it's probably been a long time since you've even heard of the sword, I will briefly explain its perks and why it's strong in this build specifically. Starting off with the intrinsic trait Exhumation. This makes it to where when you heavy attack with sword energy, you turn invisible and fire out a fan of 4 tracking void orbs, allowing you to treat the heavy attack as a weird sword shotgun hybrid. The other trait is Shot in the Dark, which has 2 parts, which reads, remaining invisible grants this weapon increased damage for a brief duration, and this damage buff is a 25 increase in our damage for 6 seconds. The second part of the perk reads, hitting a target with this weapon's projectiles while you have Shot in the Dark active weakens them, and defeating a target with this weapon while Shot in the Dark is active turns you invisible. However, this does not need to be a heavy attack kill, as light attacks will also work. If you have the catalyst for this weapon as well, you'll be given additional reserves and a 50% increase in move speed while Shot in the Dark is active. While it's not required to make it good, is still worth having for just the extra reserves alone. Going over the exotic armor and mods we have, this build uses Deimos Suffusion, which has a lot going on with it, so I'll explain it in as short detail as I can using Destiny Data Compendium. What this exotic does, when you have a Strand Super equipped, casting your Rift, suspend enemies within 6 meters, your suspensions are enhanced, gaining the following benefits. Killing a suspended target restores 15 HP, suspended targets are dealt increasingly higher command damage every half second, throwing 5 HP every time a suspended enemy takes damage from the suspend, with each tick of damage increasing by 5.5%, meaning a longer suspend equates to a higher damage ceiling, and suspended enemies take additional damage once the suspension expires. As an added bonus, your Rift suspends deal well over double damage. Well, that's a lot. The TLDR is Rift cast equals suspend, any suspend heals, and all suspend deal damage with Rift doing more. Moving on to mods, for the helmet, I use Heavy Ammo Finder, Dynamo, and Void Siphon. For gauntlets, I use Firepower, Grenade Font, and Bolstering Detonation. For chest piece, I just use General Resist mods, as well as a melee resist mod since this is a sword build. For boots, I use 2 copies of Weapon Font, though this is purely because I don't have the armor I want for this build with the stats that I want. So if you can get away with having it, I would simply use 2 Void Surges instead of 2 weapon fonts. I'm only doing this to get to 200 weapons, and for my last mod slot, I am using Void Scavenger. For the bond, I use Powerful Attraction, Distribution, and Time Dilation. Quickly going over stats, you want to have as high of a weapon stat as you can reasonably get. I sit at 160 weapons, so again my 2 weapon font mods bring me up to 200, further increasing my damage and more importantly giving me the highest chance of getting a enhanced heavy ammo brick, which given how we're going to be using Heartshadow is going to be greatly appreciated. The other stats that are important are going to be at least 100 class stat, 80 grenades, so that way our grenade font brings us up to 100, and dump the rest into super, as that will help us quickly cycle to our supers even more, which, trust me, is going to be a lot with this build. Before we get into armor set bonuses, artifact mods, and general gameplay loop, the build itself, I would like to add that if you're liking the build so far, please leave a like and subscribe. It's free and really goes a long way to help support the channel. For armor set bonuses, There's actually quite a few good options. What I personally use is 2-piece Sage Protector paired with 2-piece Swordmaster, as the amount of ability energy we get off of Sage Protector, while it is a little redundant, can come in very handy when you just need that little bit of a push to get your next ability. And Swordmaster helps with survivability quite a bit, applying exhaust to the enemies we hit with our sword or our powered melee. Though the 4-piece bonus for either of these sets are worth looking into if you want to try out either or, with Swordmasters being more defensive focused and Sage Protector being more offensive focused. The other armor set bonuses I can recommend are 4-piece Bushido, 4-piece Fair Potent, 4-piece Iron Panoply, and 4-piece Collective Psyche specifically for the longer suspend duration. Again, quite a few options, so this is pretty much entirely up to personal preference. Going over the artifact, given that we will be able to take advantage of void buffs due to Heartshadow, we'll be taking Singularity Blade, Void Infestation, and more importantly, Power from Pain to allow us to get Devour. The other mods we'll be taking are Sword Storm Combo, Combination Argent Blade, Counter Energy, and Riposte to allow Heartshadow to stun unstops. Use appropriate anti-champ mods for the activity, but I will add it again if you're using the same weapon setup I am. You'll be able to take care of all 3 champions fairly easily. A general gameplay loop of the build is going to be, you see a big group of ads, you enter either Weave Walk or use Heartshadow to go invis, jump in the big group of ads and use your Suspend Rift. This will set up Heartshadow's heavy attack to take out a group of enemies, proc a Dynamo distribution off of your Rift cast, which will give us a chunk of super energy, heal us on every single damage tick that our Suspend does, as well as give us an absurd amount of super energy depending on the amount of enemies you suspend. The reason we go with Empowering Rift is because it will have us 15% increased ammo gen whenever we are in the Empowering Rift, as well as give us a honestly ridiculous amount of grenade, melee, and rift energy on top of giving us 20% more damage. I can't really emphasize how good Empowering Rift is, you just have to try to understand its power fully. Believe me, it's honestly a little overpowered, with the downside being we don't have Healing Rift, but given how many healing sources we already have in this build, it's a little redundant, so Empowering Rift just becomes the obvious answer. Just use it, trust me, please. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you may die, you have both Weave Walk and Invis to fall back on, allowing you to reposition and think about your next move. And since both require you to be either in the air, this one being Weave Walk, or on the ground through Heartshadow, there's very few situations where either of them isn't an option. In regards to your ammo management, you should treat Heartshadow as your main weapon due to having ideally 200 weapon stat and a Void Scavenger, as well as a heavy ammo finder and Empowering Rift. There's going to be very, very few times you'll actually run out of ammo, and in the event you do have 2 other weapons you can fall back on to quickly get the engine running again. I will say the biggest pain point of this build is going to be boss damage. Heartshadow, while it's really good in general use or roam, isn't exactly the best weapon to use for boss damage. Thankfully, both Mint and Uncivil are solid options to use, and if the boss spawns in waves of ads while damage is going on, you can use this to not only have a consistent source of healing through Daemon Suffusion, you can also treat them as a super energy machine, allowing you to cycle back to it quickly due to the tick damage from Daemon Suffusion, as well as Dynamo plus distribution. In some cases, you can also use your Suspend Rift on the boss, assuming it's sortable of course, to allow you to use Heartshadow for some quick burst damage, as Suspends have really high stagger force, and the Empowering Rift will further bolster this burst of damage via the damage buff it grants, as well as allowing you to spawn a bunch of Threadlings on the boss itself through Weaver's Call. The entire purpose of the build is to be aggressive, as it is going to directly reward you greatly for playing that way, with constant damage through Daemon Suffusion being supplemented by Woven Mail, and both Suspend, Healing, and Devour, with Weaver's Call being a good way to have consistent rift gains through our Threadlings, not to mention Bread of Mine also feeding into your rift, allowing you to loop multiple rifts at once, with each rift granting a lot of super energy and almost non-stop orbs with Thread of Wisdom, along with both Heartshadow itself as well as Weave Walk, allowing you to make on-the-fly defensive choices in regards to either repositioning or setting up your next big Suspend rift. Not to mention Threadling Grenade also being looped into you through both Devour and Thread of Generation, which will also boost your rift regen even further. With all that being said, that's pretty much it for the build. I seriously recommend trying it out, as it's been a lot of fun to mess with, and it's nice to have a little break from the Praxic Blade. If you do try it out, please let me know in the comments, and if you try out other armor set bonuses, also let me know. I'd love to try every single one I recommended, but I don't have all of them available to me, unfortunately, and even the ones I do have available, they don't really have the stats I want. But in theory, they should all be pretty good. Now, if you were here for just the build, you're free to click off. I wanted to make some quick announcements regarding a few different things. First of all, I do stream every now and then over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Marceletta, which I may even be streaming when this video goes live. I do plan to do more streams on other games. I've yet to play either of the Hollow Knight games, so if you'd be interested in something like that on the Hangout, I might be playing them. I have even been streaming some Marathon as I've been enjoying the game quite a bit. Secondly, I am also happy to announce that I'm opening up my Discord server. At the moment, there's nothing specifically planned. There's no one game that we can all collectively play. Obviously, I still play Destiny, but majority of people have clearly moved on from the game. And while it's not required to join, I am hopefully going to be fostering a little community that can simply hang out at and potentially come up with video or stream ideas. Thirdly, and finally, things regarding the channel. I do want to start uploading a bit more than just Destiny, so if you are here for just Destiny, don't worry. I'm not going to be leaving Destiny anytime soon unless the game, gets fully abandoned. But until that day comes, I'm still going to be playing the game. I'll still probably make content on it. I know I'm not exactly active all the time in regards to posting videos and stuff, but I still like the game. And I'm probably going to set up a playlist of just Destiny things for those that care, as I again want to explore other games. I've been thinking of doing a marathon video, but I'm not too sure. All that being said, that's pretty much it. I wanted to thank you for watching this far. I know this video was incredibly short compared to what I normally upload, but I just wanted to get this out quickly. I hope to see you in the next one and that you have a good day. Bye bye.